And welcome to Two Gray Goatees and a Whistle. I'm your host, Coach Huddy, joined by the coach's wife, Amanda. And our guest today is Chris Roberts. He is the founder of the Classical Education Foundation, creator of What Times What, and author of How to Make First Chair. This episode is going to be very unique, and I'm excited about it. We're going to get a little more educational on the academic side of it. Chris is excited to share some stuff. I'm excited to learn about something new. Just a little bit of background. We do have a math teacher. Amanda's here with us. I'm a science teacher. So we have education backgrounds. So this, if anything, is going to be really good for just being selfish, but good for us.
Yeah.
So anyways, Chris, how you doing?
Doing well. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Chris. So let's learn a little bit about yourself. Let's kind of get a little bit of background for you. Music education, mathematics, art accommodation you usually hear every day. And how do those paths come together? How did mathematics and music kind of come together for you?
Well, way back in high school, of course, I was in band, was a drum major and played trumpet and all that. I was just a band camper. And usually jokes follow that from the pop culture references and all. But I went to band camp up in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, and got to know the people that I was in band camp with, the counselors with, and loved the band program. And I actually went up there because of financial aid and different things like that, and went as a physics major, actually. And I wanted to be a physics teacher, and I switched to math because I preferred the math faculty. If I was going to spend 4 years with faculty, I wanted to, faculty that I felt comfortable with. And so I did that. So it's tough for me not, or it's tough for me to separate them because they both go back very far. My mom tells me when I was 2, I was counting to 100, but also in the high chair was rocking to the beat. So I really do not know the difference on that. And so I got my bachelor's and master's in math education, just stayed there and got a music education degree, and took a long path back, 30 years through IT, back to math education recently. So not the straightest, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. I didn't take the straight line to get here. But anyway, we can get into some of that.
Nice. So you've built a couple, some companies. What led you down to this this avenue of creating these different foundations? We'll kind of get into that. So let's talk about what inspired you to create a Classical Education Foundation, and to kind of explain what that is. What's Classical Education Foundation?
Well, let me tell you how I got there. Last April, I was teaching high school math. After being in IT for 30 years, I decided to go back in the classroom. I had a renewed passion for education because I ran for local school board here in Dallas, which is, it's a large district, and that was an experience and an ordeal, but I had a passion for education. And after that election, which I didn't win, and that's fine and well, I wanted to put an educator on the ballot, not just another lawyer, but the voters have their prerogative and we carry on. But I still had more to give and decided to teach. Well, I taught remedial algebra, 6 classes of it, and 120 10th graders. They didn't have the greatest experience in algebra and they needed to do it again or a better experience with it. So I had 120 students that probably didn't love math, just to be honest. They did it, they didn't have a good experience. They may have made a 70 and very close to it, needed to take more. So already it was tough crowd, right? So I'm teaching along, and as you progress through algebra, you do some factoring and then you solve quadratics by factoring. And I literally lost sleep trying to figure out how to teach that to folks that didn't know what times what is 21. They honestly did not know. They didn't know when you see 4x minus 28 that 28 is a 4 times 7, pull it out. And how do you teach this level to folks that don't know that level? And it was, I literally lost sleep trying, like, how do I do this? And I did my best, but I thought, after 30 years IT, you find the root cause analysis. What's the real root of it? I also did it, and when I was teaching math, it kind of drove me crazy. When I was grading papers teaching college math, I would every question try to diagnose every where did they go wrong? And so I traced it back to they just didn't know the times table. It's real simple. If they knew that, if they knew what times what equals 21 or 28 or 42 or whatever it is, these things are easy. You can get on to the next level. And so the IT developer part of me said, I bet technology has advanced where the browser could present the question, hear my answer, and respond. And that might be more engaging to them these days than a analog flashcard. And instead of an analog flashcard, I thought, man, how about presents it, they say it, it says right or wrong and goes to the next one at their own pace because it's kind of fun to do that. I couldn't get it to function quite right. And so I put it away a few months, and every few months I brought it back. Well, a month or two ago, I realized how to architect it so that it could go as fast as the person. And that's where I launched this. What times what? I'd say it's gamifying multiplication, but I honestly believe I've turned it more into a sport. If sportify is a word, because it's a race against the clock. You can do head to head challenges. A teacher can set a tournament round robin bracket, and I've set up where you can have a multiplication bee where there's a round of kids, elimination. It's a sport. And I'm sure other things have tried to gamify, pop the bubbles that are equal to this in multiplication, but this is a whole other level. There's leaderboards, it's a whole thing. But I've developed companies that are software as a service and it's monthly subscription. And I'm thinking, as if and I just walked the walk or walked the talk with teaching. I don't want teachers to have to subscribe. I don't want them to have to apply to subscribe or submit to subscribe or kid. I want it free because in my heart, I'm trying to educate and bring these kids up. You have to choose sometimes between whether you want to reach the kids or do you want to profit. And I thought maybe there's another way to monetize this. Maybe if I rechannel my 501(c)(3) for music education to broader education, which is the Classical Education Foundation, maybe I can get paid to do professional development. Maybe I can apply for grants as a 501(c)(3). Maybe I have a book in the works as well. And so maybe I can monetize that to help run the site so that it can be free. And so that Classical Education Foundation is a means as a nonprofit to fund this so that it can stay free because I believe if you want it to, if you're sincere and you want it to be legitimately accessible to anyone at any socioeconomic level, you architect it so that it runs in an old browser and an old device. And the way I've architected it, it's more on the server, not on the device. It's on the back end and it's free. And the best thing that I can do is to get the word out. That's why I'm very appreciative to you, is helping me get the word out because you build a base of users. I think that helps with grant submission. Look, we've got these folks, they're taking to it in one button push. It actually interprets and hears you in Spanish when you've got not just seeing it and hearing yourself say it and touching it, you're involving multiple modes of memory and everything. And so I think I'm onto something. And after some kids tried it out before school was out, they wanted to earn badges. They wanted to compete. And I built it, and they were giving up recess the next day to play it. And the teachers were amazed that they were engaged for so long on anything. And that makes me feel like I'm onto something. If it can be cool and they can develop a positive relationship with math early, I think that could help when they get to algebra, that they don't hit that same wall. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's what Classical Education founded. It is an instrument to help fund something that I think should be free so it can actually help.
Yeah, free is a very good word, Amanda.
So your sportification of math, I love it. My being a 7th, 8th, ninth grade math level teacher, we have run into that problem. And it seems to be more and more prominent that the math facts just aren't there, unless, the handful of really strong students. But for the majority of them, they're just not there. And that's a real struggle when you get into multi-step and just kind of down that line. We play, I don't know if you are familiar with the 24 game, but it's just decks of cards that have 4 numbers on them, and the goal is to use whatever operation. You have to use every number, but only once to get to the value of 24. And my kids, they love the game. They do. Even the kids that struggle, because they're doing it on their own. They're coming up with, well, that didn't work. Or, you hear the, well, I got 23. And it's, well, that's just, you're so close. But they actually had, towards the end of the year, they had a 24 tournament that was their own. It was during March Madness. And they were like, we need to set up. So this is when I needed my husband because he's all about the brackets. But we found a tournament bracket and put the kids in there and let them play. And this was their baby. And they had so much fun. And even the kids that struggled, and yes, I let them use calculators, but if you don't know how numbers work together or how to approach, well, if my number got bigger, then I need to do something, this certain operation, then it really doesn't matter anyways. But that sportification of math, that's a real thing.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It gives me a little additional validation that some people might claim competition is a bad thing, but they were asking for it. And what you're saying, they were asking for it because
Yes, they
it's
were
fun. And when
all
it's
in.
fun, when it's fun, you have a better chance than if it's not, it's
Yep.
teaching and stuff.
So one thing about so let's talk a little bit about what times what. Kind of explain about how this works exactly, and how does this differ from like traditional memorization methods that are out there?
Well, there are different game modes, but basically it's as many flashcards as you can do in 30 seconds. And it's a speech recognition game, which I've not seen. Maybe it's out there, but I was the kid that really enjoyed being fast at that. And so technically right now on the leaderboard on what times what, I'm at the top of the global leaderboard. So right now I'm the world's fastest, but records were made to be broken. And I hope that someone gets on there and tries to do that. I've hit 39 in 30 seconds a few times. And it's fun. I still think I can get to 40, and that's sort of the fun of it. But in addition to like a daily game that is the same for everybody all over the world, which is like Wordle, there's also called a gauntlet, which is just random every time. And that's sort of what the multiplication bee that's built into this is based on. But then, because of my math education background, there's a level up area. I didn't call it learning or lessons. You call it level up because, that sounds better. Let me level up and then go do that. And it is based on how I remember learning it in second grade. A group of us went to a room. They had a cassette tape, and it said, like if you're working on your twos, it'd say 2 times 2 is a little shuffle. 2 times 3 is, and it would go sequentially. And if the group got it, you put a sticker on the chart, and then you do the 2 in random order. And if you did, you get a sticker on the chart. That's exactly what I've built. There's a timed version of it, so even if a class is working on their 2s, 'cause you can't go straight 12 by 12. There's a progression there. If you're working on your
Right.
2s, there's actually head-to-head challenges on that, so even at that level, you can compete, which is good. They are in practice mode that is untimed, and there are hints. And the hints, I've tried to be as pedagogically accurate as possible. The first little hint is just showing the commutative pair. Flip it is what it's called. That you don't remember you don't know what 12 times 2. Maybe you remember 2 times 12. Oh yeah. Another one is there's an array and you tap the button and it is repeated addition. And so you might see a row of 7 and another row of 7, and at the bottom it's showing 7 plus 7 plus 7 that reinforce the repeated addition. So it's legitimate lessons and teaching. The other one shows a number line where you're skip counting, where it shows 7, 14, 21. As you tap it, it does it. And so it's not just looking at it, you're interacting with it. And I think as you engage more of your senses, including tapping to do things, you're more engaged in the learning. And so it goes from learning all the way up to 39 and 36. It's really a large gamut. But what's interesting is even when you practice, after you complete your first practice session, you can get a badge. It's a cute little turtle or something, it's on their level. And those are the same things as those stickers that I got in second grade, and kids love stickers. They love bubbles and they love stickers. And so in this case, a badge is similar to that, but they're much cuter than the circles we had. So there, a lot of it is from what I experienced myself. And the media was different back then. We didn't have the internet and all that. We had a cassette tape that played that or what have you. And now we have this, and this sort of meets them where they are, or that's the goal anyway.
Nice.
Nice. I like it. All right, we're going to move on a little bit here about mastering before pressure. Something else kind of you brought up a little bit. And one thing that we know that coaches talk about is constantly is preparation, right? Why is mastery so important before kids are put in a pressure situation? So why do many students, athletes struggle with fundamentals, and can confidence actually come from repetition? So when we were talking about using this program, building confidence to maybe so that these kids who had such a horrible time with education or your list with math, and you're using this repetitive memorization type of method, can you kind of talk a little bit about how using mastery can help with pressure?
Absolutely. And as you're talking, I'm seeing three parallels: sports and fundamentals. And how do you take a ground ball? You make sure it doesn't get past you. The way you get down there and block and scoop that ball, and you drill and you drill and drill until it's automatic in your bones, so that when there's pressure, you can field that ground ball. When I was in my 40s, I played soccer, and so that's why I was interested in your May 18th podcast. And you're talking about soccer, and I had to learn that. I grew up playing football, where you start a play, finish a play, and in soccer, every end of a play is the beginning of the next. And once I really wrapped my head around the 360, there was a learning curve. And one of the fundamentals there that I had to learn that was very frustrating. And so I put myself in a learner's shoes as often as I can is first touch. And, we would go out sometimes and practice and we would play three touch, where you can receive the ball, move it a little bit, and then pass it. And that was very frustrating. In my mind, I see videos on YouTube and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to move and move. I'm going to go around here. And then you can only touch it three times. You're like, I can't do it. It was very frustrating. But after doing that over and over and over, finally, that first touch got good where, because if it bounces off you, it's going to be a turnover and it's over. But if you can get that first touch to catch that ball and keep it right at you, turns out your second and your third touches they're pretty good as well. And once I got that, I moved from the defense and just take my speed. I was able to move further and further up. But it was a fundamental skill that I had to learn and do that. Music, that was what the book was. How to Make First Chair was about the 3 months before you prepare. And one was don't play it so slowly that you don't mess up. But there was an overlearning section where you play it with a metronome perfectly 3 times in a row and then bump it up, and eventually there's a whole system on how to work that so that when it gets under pressure, you can perform it just like fielding a ground ball or anything like that. I've played the national anthem for the Texas Rangers a couple of times and for their minor league a few times, and I will tell you, there have been times where my mind has gone away from what I was doing, and thank God that my fingers still knew it. It happens almost every time I play it, but that's why I play it in the key that I played it in high school 40 years ago, because my fingers know it when my mind goes, notices the flag or notices the crowd or something going on, so that you can perform under that pressure. That and then here in math, when are you performing in math, right? Is it just a test, or is it that next concept, or is it in life when you're in a place where it should be handy if you had some number sense, and maybe it's even more impactful because the rest of your life, math is all around us, and it's going to be a lot better for you in the case. But I think all the principles are the same. Get comfortable with the fundamentals, whether they're scales or first touch, fielding a ground ball, knowing your multiplication facts, and then you can use those whenever it comes time to do more advanced things or perform under pressure. It needs to sort of be locked in your bones. And honestly, it only happens if you let your brain have that repetition. One time, it's not going to lock it in. Repetition does. And that's sort of consistent with the book from 20 years ago that I wrote in a completely different domain, is that the repetition helps you own that. You're going to get to some test down the way, some standardized test. It's going to say a garden is 42 square feet, and it's going to go on. You might start thinking 6 times 7 might be part of it. And then if it says, hey, if the length is one more than the width, and you can say, I don't have to spend a lot of time breaking down and all these techniques and everything. You can just know the answer and go on because 6 and 7 is 42. And if you don't know that, you're going to bog down in some stuff that could be easy for you. And so I think there's value in it. And I'm going to evangelize this. And what's crazy is that it's natural for me. I've done some other projects and like in the business world, I can't get that excited about onboarding or, as much as I do that because this goes back and you can see a common thread through my entire life and I'm excited about it. So I am happy to share it. Again, thanks for having me on to share
Yeah,
these things. But
absolutely.
the the fundamentals ingrained in your brain and your muscles because there's all kinds of distractions, all kinds of variables, math variables and other variables that are come along so that you can perform under pressure.
So one thing about this, about when you're practicing this and you're building on repetition, and you can speak from math, you can speak from the music side of this, and it translates into any kind of coaching. But how can adults tell when practice is becoming productive versus frustrating?
Well, I've had that experience with my own children, and it's easy to read nonverbals and get me out of here and let me do something else. Or engagement. If they're engaged, that's a pretty good sign. If they want to put it away, that might give you tells a clue as well. It's one of the reasons that I did include the practice, so that you might be able to develop that at all the way down, including the ones, which adults think that's easy. But when you're first learning it, it's new. And so even if you're, in a class and you're working on your ones, it's new. But you can challenge and you can still have fun with that. And if you have fun with it, again, you have a better chance. Maybe you have success. Maybe you start developing positive feelings and positive relationship with math. And that is something I hope we do early and often. In fact, I do have what plus what already in the works. It's going to strip away some of the sharing because on what times what, once you do the daily challenge, you could share it to social and like a Wordle type graph. I'm not doing that in what plus what. Adults aren't going to be doing the addition. That's going to be geared down a lot more. I'm looking at all the different ways addition could be taught, and those are going to be the hints. But for example, what the easiest gameplay for the youngest kids will be 30 seconds, and it's just name the number, right? Do you know your numbers? I mean, we go back to the beginning so they can have success at some level and then leverage that. And it's just like math, it's incremental. And I think your relationship with math will also be. And so I know that sounds silly, but for us, because it's second nature. But for someone just learning the numbers, because you imagine 30 seconds and you just name those and it comes up and they're saying three, just like the recording I have of me, an audio recording when I was 2, and someone says, "How many?" And I'm saying 2, 5, you know? And if that's fun and they're having fun doing math, I think it's you're on the right track. And so that is in the works, not just multiplication, but all the operations. That's the classic math games right now, just what times what. But I really have always had that desire to help students with the light bulb over their head. When I was in second grade, I would finish my math as fast as possible, go around helping the other kids, but I was also listening to what the teacher was telling the other kids. So I'd put that in my arsenal to help them out. And so this is very on brand and natural for me 50 plus years later. And maybe that's why I'm excited about it. Because to me, this makes perfect sense. My lifelong relationship with math and all the things that I encountered, including the competitions in middle school and high school. let's see if you have students in 3rd or 4th grade and they see all this and they're like, man, this is a big deal. Look at this. You can earn badges and you can rating and you can go head to head. And this is cool. This is a big deal. And if they're engaged on it, mm, it's better than a lot of other stuff they can be engaged with, you know? It seems like a real positive step. Amanda, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. I think that as a natural human being, the struggle is good, and the struggle is something we all need. Whatever we're working towards, whether we're working towards beating our 400 time, whether we're working towards making the pass in the shot in basketball, or whether we're working towards being able to factor out a math problem. But if we can start, because we're human, we all start at different levels, and if we can start at whatever level is appropriate to us and be successful in that level and see those successes, I think we're more likely to stay in that learning mode than if we're just shoved into wherever. And that goes for being a first time softball player as a freshman, and you're surrounded by kids that played little league, and you know, we all start somewhere. And if we don't have somebody willing to help us at the level we're at and build from that level and help us get those successes even with the struggle, I think we lose that interest and we get frustrated, and then that's just we learn to dislike math.
Right.
Too often. I agree. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking back to my own recent experience there in soccer. And I made plenty of mistakes and I hate letting the team down. I remember that. But luckily, I had some folks just, keep at it, get better with the fundamentals. And I miss playing now. It was a joy to do that. So I was thinking about that as you were going along. But you're right. Success should bring, confidence. And that's key to what I guess I'm trying to do with what times what and some other things. Let them have a good positive relationship and then just incrementally build on that, just like you build in math.
Yeah, those foundations and fundamentals in anything that you are trying to better yourself in are going to make the next level, the harder level,
Yeah.
that much more enjoyable.
And I think what
Yeah,
we got to make anybody, any athlete or whoever it is, even students who are in education, failure at different levels is okay if with the trying, as long as it's a little bit. And then you need to feel uncomfortable. Put yourself outside of your, or you won't grow. So when you're learning a new concept, or in athletics, okay, you're really good going to your right. Okay, let's work on going to your left now. Practice is the practice is the best place to do this.
Yes.
The best place to fail. And I think sometimes in education, especially kids who are always looking for that A paper, it's and they get a B or
It's
whatever
the
they
end of the
miss. It's
world.
the end of the world, and it's just like, man. And I want those kids to care, because then on the other spectrum, we got the kids who are like, nah, I'm not turning in today. So it's just, you got both spectrums. But when we are doing these practices, and we're building this repetition, getting them out of their comfort level. So we want them to master at, but once they start getting that mastery, then it's like, okay,
Now what?
now you're comfortable. We got to get you feeling a little uncomfortable so you can now progress and get even better.
and I think a good coach or a good teacher does exactly what you're talking about. Meet them where they are. Like that's a common thread on everything. Meet them where they are and take them to one step further. It's that N plus one, right? And a good teacher will see where they are versus throwing them into the deep end too soon. I was also thinking whenever you're talking about that, with getting in sort of over your head too soon and being frustrated and giving up on that. In 6th grade is when sort of our math program in Quitman, Texas, our junior high teacher, Sue Barber, came down to the 6th grade elementary school and started teaching number sense, which is a UIL competitive event in Texas. It's all in your head. You can't erase, you can't change your answer. And if you skip it, it's wrong. And once you're done, you just draw a line. The 80 questions, if you only do 10, if you draw the line at that. But it is all mental. And if there's 2-digit times 2-digit multiplication, outside the 12s, there's rules and strategies and other things. Well, some kids that didn't have the basics just said, "No way, can't do that." That's the deep end for them. And And I feel this with the multiplication is accessible to all of them. And even if I had the addition coming soon, I've got uh, a second grade teacher relative, and she said, I've got some kids that addition is easy for them. They need multiplication sort of as a differentiation within the classroom. If I had, hey, this is better than anything I have in the Dallas ISD school district, which I was like, "Oh, okay, that's definitely onto something." But she's given that to them to let them go instead of, being locked into, here's our lesson, this is
Mhm.
it, you turn your paper in, you're done. This lets them go as far as they want to go. Okay, you did 20 and 30 seconds, go head to head. Who's going to win? Okay, now they're trying to go and trying to be on the leaderboard because there's different leaderboards geographically and generationally. And so it's a way to keep a bar out there. Uh, Hey, if they want to take me on, fine, send me an invite to the head to head challenge. This will be fun. And in fact, I could see parents challenging their students. And maybe you're rusty with your times tables, and that's good because maybe it's a close challenge. Okay, maybe they want to do it again. This is positive. This is all positive. Whether you beat them
Right.
and you're like out on the basketball court, you can finally beat me, and the son is taking over the parent in the driveway basketball. Maybe it's like that as well. Practice it. Challenge them. They may take pride that they can beat you, and they want to do it again because they can beat you in something. See, that's what I mean by accessible. It's just times table, but you put a clock on it and put head-to-head challenges. It's something cooler and maybe, more engaging, and so and maybe I'm just a nerd and I love it.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong being a nerd. We're talking about making this stuff competitive. Both of you guys have brought up situations where you take your class, your mathematics, and you create games to make it competitive. And that's the one thing I think that gets missed, and not just in the classroom, but also in athletics, where we're as coaches, we're always trying to make practice more engaging. And, especially when it comes to the parts that really kids, even adults, don't want to do. Okay. It's like, okay, because you got to get your conditioning in, whatever it is, you're running sprints, whatever it is, and, if you can build competition around your practices, like, okay, so I need to get conditioning for these kids. What can I do to make this a competition within practice? So I've seen it when football, we grab the bags, the dummy bags, the long ones and the stand up bags, and then they would have to carry them, and you would have relays of, 4 to a team or 5 to a team, and then they'd have to relay back and forth carrying these bags, so they're getting their conditioning in, but for them, it's a competition, and it's not just, okay, line up on the line
It's
and
not just
run,
running.
not just running. And the same thing that you guys are talking about, with the gaming and stuff like that, you're in the tournaments and all that stuff that you're creating with your games, the kids are learning. You've designed it so there's a switch in that brain that, and kids are motivated by games. And so when you can make something like, something what you guys are talking about, a competition, it makes everything seems like, you know, a lot easier, and time goes faster and stuff like that. So on the other side of this, competition can be healthy. How do you balance that with not overwhelming kids with burnout, or, you know, they just they don't want to do it anymore? So how do you improve that? I guess my question would be like, how do you create healthy competition without creating the burnout?
Well, that's, I guess, fortunate that I've answered that in another domain in how to make first chair because there are folks that don't like the competition side of music at all because of the maybe a pureness of an art form and maybe competition has no place. There are folks that proclaim that, but I put it in perspective. Is keep it in perspective? Is that we're doing this to better ourselves This is not mission critical, serious, life threatening stuff. We're doing this when it's not fun, stop. But we're doing it to improve ourselves. And in the case of music, ideally, so someone may have an emotional experience, a positive emotional experience to the music. That's really what we're our goal. That's really winning, you know. But that's talked about in, I guess, any domain. There are kids that get burnt out on sports competition or music competition. There's just up the road in Louisville, they've got some of the best bands in the world. I think the private instruction they get from North Texas, which is one of the best music schools, helps. But when you hear them, you are amazed. And I'm surprised not more of them go to college. But maybe they've had enough of that in high school because they're going to they're traveling all over to these competitions and parades and everything, and maybe they've had enough of it. I'm always shocked because they're some of the finest musicians out there, but they can reach a saturation point with this. You know, they're not going to be doing this the whole semester. It's just one component of it, and hopefully they'll keep it in perspective that it's just good fun with, hopefully a positive outcome of having better skills and in this and won't, hit that wall in math. Hopefully, it'll just keep staying fun for as they advance and get out of the comfort zone when it's that next little incremental thing. But hopefully, you've built a sort of a relationship with math, a positive, math confidence. Before I would take a test, I would say, "Okay, I'm gonna rely on my mathematical intuition." I said this self-talk when I was a kid, but
Mm.
it worked. I have this, be confident in my mathematical intuition, but it really was grounded in all those fundamentals that I had. The reason I was good in physics, I had strong math, but it can go back to counting and adding and multiplying and then building on those fundamental things.
Yeah. So let's shift it to building culture. On our show, we spend a lot of time talking about culture. What are some similarities between building a positive classroom culture and building a sports culture? So, what principles work in both environments, and why do relationships matter so much when you're trying to build this culture?
Good on the spot question.
Thank you.
I may try to draw on my vast experience because I've also been responsible for culture in the corporate world and leading technology organizations. But you kind of gave away the answer with the relationship because I genuinely cared about the folks that I had. I tried to keep things light because there was a time where things weren't. And maybe that's common. Try to keep things light and positive because there's going to be a moment where it's serious and you gotta get down to business. If it's always serious and always get down to business, that's too much, and I think you always have to find that balance of, am I, being lighthearted or, light with it, and then they have more trust when it comes to the serious part, and, uh, in technology, things break, okay? And it's stressful because the companies and those are the moments that I'm talking about there, and if you have a relationship when, people are jumping in and willing to help and do their part. And maybe there's parallel in sports and other develop a relationship. So whenever it comes, a tough time, and maybe someone fails at it, maybe someone misses the shot, and that relationship helps carry you through that, and realize that it might be you next time that misses that shot. You better be nice and just be supportive, and that's the way the ball bounces sometimes. In a classroom, I think there's also probably a balance. I'm trying to think back to this last year, which bless you if you're a teacher out there. After doing IT for 30 years, I will tell you that last year when I taught was the most exhausting year. Part of it was the nature of remedial algebra, again, with folks that I, I, I can't say they were enthusiastic to come in and learn. And sometimes it is a struggle to try to bring them up whenever they would rather try to sneak and watch something on the Chromebook or put their head down or just not.
Right.
There were some challenges, and that is exhausting because I'm thinking about I'm losing sleep, as I said, or losing sleep over how to teach it to them, and they care less. That could be exhausting, but that I will tell you that was an exhausting year, and how do how I build a culture in there is probably find a good balance. And that was a small sample size also, by the way. I wasn't teaching the whole spectrum of students, and abilities and stuff. That one was extra challenging. So I just tried to stay my positive self, go in there, find wins where I could with them, try to find something positive and even the smallest thing. You got this step right. You missed it here, but you know, I give you, partial credit. This is and try to accentuate the positive wherever you can find it. It's just sometimes more than others. And
Yeah. So we talked about how building relationships is important, is a key component, I think, for your building your culture and stuff like that. What are some other characteristics that maybe separates what a great teacher is or a great coach is? What are common traits that you have seen among other people that are helping young people succeed? What are some of the things that you see?
this one I feel a little more confident in answering because I think a good coach or good teacher has to have many tools in their toolbox, and they have to know which one is for which kid. Because as we know, they're different learners, they're different ability, different skills, all of that. A good teacher, a good coach, thinking back to that second grade me who I was trying to pay attention on what would help the light bulb. Same thing, a coach can see, okay, this kid needs positive reinforcement. This one just needs a reminder. This one, I think I saw an interview with the head coach of the Cowboys, and he was talking about our first round draft pick, the kid out of Ohio State, I forget his name, but he was saying he doesn't make the same mistake twice. All you'd have to do is, correct him and maybe also like a parent because your children are all different and you do manage them different based on their needs. And I think that's similar to, whether it's a parent or a teacher or a coach, that it's not just one way, hope you figure it out. It's what's the right way for that student? What's the right way for that athlete? And I think that's what good coaches and good teachers have in common.
So speaking of parents and community in general, in this world, it's all about immediate results. And parents often want these quick results. Because unfortunately, and the kids do too, because a lot of times what they see is the highlight reel. So they're seeing these highlight reels and they're like, that's what I want to be. Well, we know anybody who's realistic and understands how coaching or teaching works, it's like you don't get there overnight. So, how do we teach the value of mastery instead of immediate performance? Why is patience so difficult in today's culture? And how do we teach parents that they need to learn how to trust the process to get to that mastery instead of thinking it's going to come overnight?
That is especially challenging as attention spans are getting smaller. The technology that is, ubiquitous, 2 seconds if you're gonna flip to the next reel. The attention span is very small. And so that is a great question. As attention spans have reduced, how do you have delayed gratification? Because that's even with when Amazon Prime can have it there tomorrow, why wait till Christmas? It's almost what do you put under the tree? Where's the delayed gratification? It is challenging. It's normal in band and music, which is, something that, you start off just playing one note and then, hot cross buns, and then eventually you build up and then you keep practicing and eventually, it's a full song. Maybe fair question. And that's probably one that folks struggle with all the time. And maybe you communicate, and say, realistic, here's what this looks like. You got to be able to dribble with your right hand, dribble with your left hand. You got to be able to shoot from here and here. You've got to have a complete game. And that is something you build. Usually you set incremental goals. Okay. Once you get here, there's going to be another goal, and there's going to be another goal. Maybe that's what it is. And just talk about that. And maybe they're in the right sport, maybe they're not in the right sport, but maybe express that it is the journey is part of it, and try to enjoy that. If you're not having fun, it's why what are you doing? And so maybe try to find the joy in it along the way. Maybe that's one way. Try to find, the joy in these little successes. So that's a great question. I'm gonna think about that one even when I leave.
Hey, that's I'm glad I'm giving you some questions that can make you ponder a little bit. So, do you have any advice to give parents the help without creating unnecessary pressure? So, you talk about getting the first chair. So, if we're talking the music side of it, and you got these parents who are driving these kids. We see it in sports. It's the same in music or anything where there's somewhat of competition. How do we help parents give advice to support their kid without creating this unnecessary pressure on their their child?
We need to help them understand it's okay to fail, especially in something like times tables. Okay, just try again. I think that's where the pressure comes from. Okay, you always have to win. No, it's okay. I learn more from when I miss something. I can tell you right now, when I was in that second grade, that same second grade I was telling you about where I learned my times tables, they tested me to put me up a grade. I'm telling you right now, as a whatever, 6, 7-year old, they asked me, "What's the capital of Greece?" And I knew it, but it was on the tip of my tongue. I have never forgotten Athens since I was a second grade and missed that problem. Now, I am maybe a little compulsive on some of that, but learn from those things and don't be afraid to do that. And I tell you, that year of teaching, it was very challenging when someone could come in and put 0 effort, turn in 0 papers, and there was a requirement to give them a 50 or 60 so they might be able to pass the next. I'm like, let them earn their grade, let them fail. There's lessons in failure. Let it let those lessons play out, and, it's part of the process. I think folks are too afraid to fail, but there are great lessons in that. I remember after the last Super Bowl with the Cowboys and the Steelers. And as someone that grew up in the '70s, I didn't care for the Steelers. But the last one was glorious when we beat the Steelers. And I think Bill Cowart left the field, and I think he was with his daughter. And I think he said, "You can't win them all," sincerely. And I'm like, "Okay, I like you a little more." No, it kept it in perspective. Win some, you lose some. You know, that's That's part of
Yeah.
competition, and it's okay to do that and just prepare yourself for the next one. That's the journey. Just keep at it and bettering yourself.
I think that statement right there is the biggest key for parents, coaches, teachers. Keep it in perspective. Remember that the struggle is the key to your successes. And if you are pushing these kids and expect perfection out of them, they're going to be afraid of failure. They're going to be afraid of making a mistake. And you're taking the success and the joy out of so much if you do not keep things into perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a time and place where failures is acceptable. I mean, you don't wanna fail, falling out of an airplane with a parachute and your parachute doesn't open. I mean, obviously, that's something we don't want. But I mean, there's places that it's okay to fail, and even when a kid fails a test or an assignment, okay, the biggest thing is, did they learn something? Okay, what happened that maybe they need to do different? Is a different approach? Sometimes it falls on the teachers. It's like, okay, hey, maybe there was something
You
I
missed
did.
something.
I missed something when I was teaching this. Okay, do I need to fix that? So I think, you know, we gotta quit looking at failure as such a negative, and I think we need to embrace it as something to learn from. You learn from your losses more than you'll ever learn from winning all the time, and you truly do. So I
And
think there's
I think the parents have a responsibility there, whether it's sports or anything. They need to
yep,
keep that in perspective. That's
yes,
they can take it too far. Yes, yes, we want you to compete and do your best. But as Bill Cowart said, can't win them all, and keep on.
yep. So one thing we like talking about is community involvement, and we talk about a lot in our shows. We talk about how in small towns where I live, 3,500 people, I think it's really important to get out and support your community not just in athletics, but go to
Local
the
plays,
local
local
plays,
whatever.
go to the concerts, whatever else is going on. How can schools, parents, coaches, teachers work together and to get people more involved in their community and in their youth, not in sports and in education?
I think there's opportunities, and of course, communities vary. And I'm sponsoring the local swim team, the local community swim team and stuff. There are opportunities out there. I think there's opportunities at open house that people might not be thinking about. I'm thinking about this what time's what all the time. That's my wife. I think about it too much. But the elementary school has a math night or a STEM night, and there might be some little tables, little activity, some displays. I'm hoping that people understand what I've built in this platform where any teacher can set up a multiplication bee where kids join it. There's a leaderboard that an audience, just imagine script spelling bee, but they're doing times tables in front. There's a leaderboard that shows the kids. The kids go up to the same computer at the front. It's kind of a live thing, a live event. After they're done, there's elimination. It's built into the system. Anyone can do this now. It's built in, and then the next round goes, and there's fewer people. But why not have a live event like that? I want to in the What Plus. You can even have the little kids doing it and, getting a positive relationship with math, but I've also thought about that with bands, and I know the question didn't involve bands, but a community that has a business could have the local little band or choir, and of course, that's gonna bring people in, which is always a positive thing. They can support them by just hosting them, open the door to them, or, attending those events, or sponsoring a little swim club or whatever might be out there. Actively look for the opportunities, and sometimes you have to get creative, and that's okay too. Some of the best things have come from that. We've got a we have a PTA, but we've got a dad's club as well. And the dad's club has an auction every spring, raise money, sometimes provide basketball goals for the kids or things that fill in the gaps that the district hasn't been able to provide or just as a new request for the school. So we've got a pretty strong one here. And I guess, you know, look for those opportunities and create some. If not, open your door, attend things.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's gonna be different for
No.
every I grew up
Right.
in a little town of 1,800 and, the band would play at the opening of the library or the bank or, different things like
Right.
that, and that can music brings people together. Food also brings people together. It's an interesting thing. So, there's that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're going to talk a little bit about music, but yeah, I mean, like one of the big fundraisers for here, for the local school here, is they have their end of the year, they have their dinner and music, dinner and show, and the choir kids on the music or the band kids, they do a performance while, the parents and community members, they eat a good dinner
Yeah.
in the gymnasium. It's a pretty good thing. So all those type of things, getting community involvement, are important. So yeah. So I do want to talk a little bit about your book. And I want to see how, because I think your book can help translate into sports and just life in general. So you wrote a book entitled How to Make First Chair. What lessons from music can be applied to sports and in life in general from your experience?
Funny that I used plenty of sports analogies in the book. It's funny that there are some common threads. I'm probably using sports analogies with this as well. I will tell you one of them is priorities. I think I have a chapter about priorities because it's geared towards doing your best at even a performance, but a lot of times audition. There's all region, all district, all state, things like that, and you're trying to win a competition. But there are other people with that same goal and they may be prioritizing it more than you. And that's priorities are sports or domain agnostic, whether you're talking about band, sports, math. If you prioritize it, or how about this? If you don't prioritize it and there's someone that is, they're going to do better. They're going to beat you if they're
Mhm.
prioritizing this. And so I have a whole chapter on priorities. And if you can't say, I want to do this and I want to do that, and it's just going to magically happen. That's not how it goes. How to make first year is about the work ethic. I was in a little, as I said, a 1,800 person town. We didn't have a massive private lesson program. It was, the band director or two would help. That's all. We only had one back then. I needed this book because I had the work ethic. I wanted it. I did prioritize it, and so I wrote it for folks so they would understand. There's no magic. It's work. Here's how you do the work. That's the book, and it's 3 months before. It's not an instant gratification. In fact, it says, if you don't have the 3 months, I recognize one of doing it slow and steady, one of overlearning, and one of performance practice, that to me was the natural progression that worked. I had freshmen make the all-state band, which is, rare. Usually that's for upperclassmen and stuff. But the first was slow and steady, then overlearning, and then performance practice. That was in a nutshell. But it said if you don't have 3 months, at least have a good characteristic sound, be accurate, and then speed. But not if you play something too fast and get all the wrong notes, all the notes are wrong. I mean, you just good sound, accuracy, and then speed, but speed last. And it spoke to having good fundamentals, do what you do well, and if you aren't prioritizing it, it's not gonna happen. If you're not prioritizing the work that it takes to do it, be realistic. You're not gonna win the championship if you don't give your all in practice, and if you miss in practice, don't expect to win the championship. That your actions aren't reflecting your priorities, and that's probably, the biggest one, is that it requires work, but you have to prioritize it, or someone else that's prioritizing it higher is going to beat you. Just accept that, and that's that's just
Right.
real life.
For reals.
For real. Yeah. And the one thing that I've always told kids, and when it comes to sports, is like that, especially, if they want to get better or something, I said, and I always ask the kids this, I go, when do you get better? And then, well, at practice, whatever, said no, when nobody's looking. So, yeah, you're at practice and you're showing up and you're doing the work here. That's great. But what else are you doing? When I think about, when I look at music and I look at sports and stuff like that, because I like music and stuff like that, but I like a lot of the hard rock, faster stuff. So I'm looking at like the drummer from Slipknot and how fast he is on the drums, or I'm looking at Eddie Van Halen and how he played the guitar. I'm just like, my gosh, they're amazing. But it's like, but what you don't see is all that
They
work
probably ate, slept,
and
drank
drank, and
that.
that's what they did. They got drumsticks in their back pocket and everywhere they go. And the same thing in sports, you know, Steph Curry and
You're
stuff like
dribbling
that.
a basketball
They're
as you
dribbling a
walk to
basketball.
school. Yeah.
Pete Marinovich, was driving his car and has his arm out the window with a basketball, dribbling it down the street. All this stuff, that's how they got better when nobody's looking. And so I think kids need to understand that. So with that, we talked about the instant gratification, and you talk about you have to have the discipline. You have to have delayed gratification. You got to understand you got these 3 months to get to that point. With the challenge that we talked about earlier about the technology and attention span and stuff like that, what is there a way of approaching, or what strategies is there any? I mean, this is probably a really hard to answer, but is there a way or an approach that we can use to help kids and even parents understand that the delay gratification, there's value in that?
It's natural when I put on my music education hat, you know, it's built in. You you can't pick it up and be a virtuoso. That's and every day you're just getting a slightly better, slightly better. It's like, because it's a foreign object you're putting up to your face or something, it's not going to be, easy and normal. It takes practice. That's the lesson. It takes practice to get there, and we're learning it, when you're in band every day, so it's easy when I put on that hat. We just need to apply it to everything else. You're just gonna get a little bit better and a little bit better each day, regardless of what you're doing, but it does require that daily discipline that you said. Yeah, pick a domain. You're not gonna go out and set any world record in anything just right off the bat, so,
I think a big part
yeah,
to that
incremental.
is sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a Japanese term kaizen, Kaizen, that means incremental improvement. When I was in my IT world, we talked about that a lot in your systems. Okay, I've got a system. Let me just maybe it's the you eat an elephant one bite at a time type of thing, but it's just incremental improvement, and that's that's the life you live every day. You're not looking for perfection, you're looking for progress, and that's it every day. We're just going to get a little bit better each day, and that's what we do in all of these things.
Right. I think it all comes back to learning how to set realistic goals in our life. You have those priorities, you are keeping things in perspective. And along with that, you need to be able to set goals for yourself or help your kids set goals or your students or your athletes and be like, okay, today, we're learning this fundamental. And whether it be a multiplication chart of fours or we're learning how to make a left-handed layup. But that goal needs to be achievable, not easy, but achievable. And then it needs to tie into the next goal and the next goal. And I think hopefully parents who are keeping things in perspective are helping their kids learn how to set goals and reach those goals.
I agree with that. I'm hoping that they keep things in perspective and have the characteristics that we're talking about with good teachers and good coaches. Number one, a good honest assessment of where the person is to start.
Right.
A good honest assessment. Because
Honest
you
is the
you
key
can't
word.
right, you can't think 3 steps ahead when and so, and I guess, parents are human, they're gonna have challenge with that, but that's the first thing. It's we love our kids, of course, but an honest assessment is where you start because you can't do an N plus 1 unless you know that where that N is, the math person coming out in me, but that's where the way I think.
Yeah. All right, Chris. So we're going to do some rapid questions with you. So I'm just going to throw a question out to you and you give me a quick answer. I mean, I'm putting you on the spot. If you need a little time, you can, but it's a little game I play with my guests.
I just hope it's times tables.
Well,
7 times 9, go.
It's 163. Let's go.
we're going to stay away from the math because I might lose listeners because, oh my God, they're talking about math. So, all right, here we go.
It's a
First
worthwhile
one.
sport. Worthwhile.
Yep. Okay, first question. Favorite teacher growing up?
Mr. Lawrence, algebra, geometry, physics, and trig, all 4.
Wow.
Oh, there we go.
Small school.
There we go. Favorite coach growing up?
Can I say my band director?
That's
Yes,
fine. No, absolutely.
coach.
He's a coach.
My band director, Neil Sutton, because there was a time where you kind of had to, some guys didn't have to pick. I had to pick. I was small.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's it.
Best book every parent should read.
Not including,
You
your own.
include your own, man. Plug your book, man. Do what you
well,
want.
the one that I'm about to write, I'm writing Math Education in the Age of AI, but it's a lot more human and relationship oriented than you'd believe. But I think that it will relate, and then parents will be able to relate to that. And I think every parent is probably concerned with their child's math education. You think they should be. And so I'll say that one. I usually write more books than I read, sad to say.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Hey, okay, 2 more here. Most underrated quality in successful kids.
I'm going to hyphenate so I can persistence and not being afraid of failure, as we spoke. If they're not afraid of failure and they're persistent and they have drive, I think maybe drive implies all those because regardless of what happens, bumps in the road, fine. Drive. If they have drive, they're going to be successful. Regardless of their teacher, they're going to succeed if they have drive. And so that's what I look for.
Okay. And last one, what's one thing adults worry too much about?
Can I be on theme and say perfection?
No,
I think that's what I'll say. That's consistent, and I believe that. Let's stop with that. Strive, yes. Be driven, yes. Give your all. Compete. Perfection, you're going to be disappointed if that's what the point is.
all good. Okay, we're gonna move on to our next segment, and then I'm gonna let you have the final word here. Our next segment, we always do this, is called Mascot of the Week. So I always look at mascots from across the country, high school, sometimes even minor league sports. These mascots are not common. So up around where we live, up in Idaho, there's a town called Orofino, and they're the maniacs. You got the Yuma criminals down in Arizona. In Oregon, we have the Bend Lava Bears. So one place that we're going to go up to the state of Washington, and we're going to Camas, Washington. And in Camas, Washington, timber industry, in fact, a paper mill was a big part of the economy of this area. Unlike mascots of having an animal fierce warrior, this nickname is deeply tied to its history in the city itself. Back in 1883, a paper mill was established in Camas along the Columbia River. Over the years, the mill became one of the largest paper producing faculties on the West Coast. And at one point, was considered the largest paper mill of its kind in the world. Generations of families in Camas, in the town of Camas, worked at this place and were tied to the paper mill. Our mascot of the week is the Papermakers. That is the mascot of the week.
Wow.
They have a mascot named Joe Papermaker that celebrates the workers and the labor that shape the town.
Judging on the fact of what a paper mill smells like, I was kind of going with Stinky Pete's.
Man, paper mills
it is the
stink.
worst smell.
Oh man, it's rotten eggs.
There's
Oh,
one
man.
in El Dorado, Arkansas that I understand, and yeah, you
Yep.
don't want to be downwind. You do not wanna
Yes.
But the Papermakers is a little
Yeah,
better.
Papermakers.
be
Yeah.
Papermaker.
Papermakers. Yep. So about the high school, it's 912. It's approximately 1,900 students. Teacher ratio is 22-1. Ranks among the top 10% of public high schools in Washington. Reading proficiency is about 90%, well above the state average. Camas sits just east of Vancouver, Washington, along the Columbia River, not too far from Portland. The city has grown considerably with a population of 28 to 30,000 residents. Historically, the economy revolved around the paper mill, but recent years, technology engineering companies have come to the area. Hewlett Packard, Wafer Tech have helped transform the region. Camas isn't cheap. It's about 30 to 40% higher than the national average. Median home price is around $700,000, so it's a little spendy. So yeah, that is our mascot of the week, the Papermakers. Yeah.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to give you the final. I'm going to give you one closing question, and I'm going to leave you. I want to leave it with your thoughts on this. Our show is about helping coaches, parents, and players become better people, not just better competitors. If you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice on raising disciplined, confident kids, what would it be?
Cristiano Ronaldo said, "Talent without work ethic is nothing." You got to have that work ethic, and however you can encourage your child to have a good work ethic, if the nature or nurture or whatever combination demonstrate it, but that might be demonstrated in them doing the dishes. It might be doing in chores. It's not going to kill them. It might teach them work ethic and some appreciation. You can get, maybe it's to the drive that I was speaking to. They have drive. If find something that helps them understand and develop a good work ethic. If they do that, I think they'll be successful in whatever they choose, because the work ethic's going to take them through. So maybe that speaks to the discipline we've spoken to. I think they do go hand in hand, discipline and a good work ethic. So anything you can do to encourage that, I would say do that.
All right, sounds great. I'd like to thank Chris for joining us. I'd like to thank Amanda for joining me, the coach's wife. Thanks for being here. We will put, I'll have you send me the links, and I will put that in the description for your book and for the math games that you got set up here in your foundation. And it'll be on when you go through descriptions and stuff like that. On looking at the podcast, you'll see that in there. So again, I want to thank Chris, and everybody take care of yourself.
Thank you. Appreciate you.